Welcome back to Builders of the Broken Bazaar. I'm your host again, Dr. Tabish Zaman. Now, as you must have noticed, every week on this podcast, we try to understand what happens after the policy announcement, the funding cuts, the actual headline. Today's story is about someone who lives in that after and chooses to turn it into a beginning for other people. Right now in Britain, more than 82,000 asylum seekers are still waiting for decision, and some have been waiting for years. And during those years, their life is on hold. No work, limited support, and endless uncertainty. At the same time, 51% of the councils, they say they issue bankruptcy notices within 2 years, likely two, meaning cuts to exactly the services refugees, families, and communities rely on. Now, despite all of this, you find these pockets of humanity, small rooms where English is taught, church basement where people drink tea together, community halls that feels more like home than any official building. And one of those places is Bora Shabaa, founded by someone who arrived in this country with uncertainty, fear, and absolutely no roadmap. But she still chose to build a home for others. Severine Kipili. She came to UK as a refugee. She didn't know the language, she didn't know the system, but she knew this. No one should rebuild their life all alone. Today, Bora Shabaa reports hundreds of people. They support every year with English classes, youth clubs, sewing circles, cultural orientation, and something no funding line ever captures: the word belonging. Severin, I'm so glad you are here. Welcome to Builders of the Broken Bazaar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tabish, and thank you for inviting me.
Like I said, so
Thank
let's
you.
begin. And I want to start with you, your organization. Again, we'll have plenty of time to talk about your work. But when people talk about refugees, and I'm talking about the general population, they often forget a very simple truth that nobody who's in that state plans to rebuild their life in a foreign country. It happens because something forced them to leave. And the data shows how disorienting these early days can be for those individuals. Again, 56% of the refugees, they felt completely alone during the first 3 months of the UK in the UK. 67% didn't know how to access basic services. And on an average, refugees wait 2 years and 7 months for stable housing decisions. So I want to go into your lived experiences, Severin. When you arrived in the UK, new language, new weather, new everything. Do you remember the very first moment you thought, gosh, I have to start all over again? What did it feel like for you?
Thank you so much, Dr. Tabish. When I first arrived here, I was completely lost. I mean, lost in a new country with no family, nobody that I knew, no English at all. And then a weather that, I never experienced before because I come from a very hot country. So I was completely lost and I was traumatized because, as you know, I left my country. I was forced to leave my home country because of the war. And I spent several months of work with my baby because my baby was 8 months with my baby on my back, and I left everything behind. So I worked several months until I got into a small village in a bordering country where I spent few months, and from there I was forced to go into the refugee camp where I spent 7 years. Then I had that opportunity to come to the UK, and that was in 2006 when I arrived here, and I was completely lost, completely lost. And my thinking was to see, I mean, a big house, a nice house, and a nice weather. But when I arrived here, so things were not the way I was thinking.
I can totally I mean, I wouldn't go there and, your experience of what you've gone through. And despite that, coming into this part of the world, having that vision to help others, to build a life for others, including yours as
Yes.
well. I just want to go look at a support system. Was there anyone, was there something which helped you during that time? A thing, an institution, or a person? Do you felt that, yes, when you reflect back, do you have anything which you could share
Yes,
with us?
absolutely. Yeah, because when we came in 2006, we came on the Gateway program. And the Gateway
Mm-hmm.
program has supported us for a year, where we had caseworkers, we had people who were involved in education, and we got the support because our children, because we couldn't speak the language at all. So they arranged, the schools for our children. So we went through, lot of support from the Refugee Council, because we had the support from the Refugee Council. I do remember the day that they were taking us to show where our kids were going to study. I was just looking at, am I going to remember where I came from? And I was just thinking I may get lost on my way back when taking the
Yeah,
kids
yeah,
to school. It was, a process that did, really help us, because they did really support us. And
yeah.
I do remember my children going to school and running away from other kids because they wanted to talk to them, but they wouldn't speak the language. So they were running away,
Yeah.
from those.
Everyone talking in English.
Yes,
And did you mind if you share with us what language you brought to this part of the
yes,
world? What was your native
yes.
language?
So I speak Swahili and French. Yeah. So
Swahili
those
and
are
French.
the
Okay.
languages that I do speak. And I also learned language, in Zambia, because when we got there, for us to be able to get, food, water. So we had to practice the Bemba. So I also speak Bemba, which
Wow.
is one of the languages
Wow.
spoken in
Brilliant.
Zambia.
I mean, of course, you find ways and mechanisms through which you survived, and you made sure things were ongoing for us, and which is what brings me to. Of course, you mentioned about the Gateway Program and Refugee Council, which I can mention to my audience as well. They do a fabulous job. I mean, this was in 2006, but here we are talking about
Yes,
2025. They're doing some fabulous work in the community, and here in Hull I can talk about it. I've been working with them as well, and they have different programs, different integration programs, different support programs, and the way they operate in and around people who need
yes,
help and
yeah,
support is
yeah,
absolutely
they do
fabulous.
amazing.
So I would encourage others to, go have a look at what Refugee Council is all about and how it upholds the British values and tradition in terms of helping
Yes,
people and
yeah,
supporting people who really need it. So thank you for sharing that, Severine. So now comes the most interesting part. The most sort of, when I look at Bora Shabaa, I mean, look at how powerful it is and how small it started. You didn't have a big contract. You never got a grant, a sort of a huge grant as such. But having spoken to you earlier as well, handful of women and some sewing machine. So that seems very, very interesting. And again, if we look at some of the data, 68% of the refugee support system, or you look at the groups in and around, it began this way. And what I mean by that is I'm talking about informality, informal
yes,
ways in kitchens, in living rooms, in
yes,
church halls, through messages. So I want to know. I want because that's very enterprising.
Yes,
Can you take us back to those early days? What was happening around, and what made you think, actually, this is not about
yes,
a small gathering.
yeah,
How you went on building that?
yes. Dr. Tabish, I can tell you that Bora Shabaa was born from my own journey of displacement. I saw firsthand how refugees often face barriers to housing or employment, and not just
Hmm.
to housing and employment, but to dignity. I wanted
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
create a space where lived experience isn't a limitation, okay, but a foundation for empowerment. Yes.
Hmm.
So our mission is simple. We want to
Hmm.
transform survival into opportunity by offering, as you've mentioned, ESOL classes, sewing classes. We do other things as well, community gardens, wellness walks, youth clubs, mentoring, and community events that allow people to build and rebuild their lives with pride and agency. And that
I like the
started
word.
with just, with nothing. So giving our time, volunteering, and creating the, informal space
And
for
that was it was a
refugees.
huge task, I suppose. When you mentioned the word dignity, that is so
Yeah.
important because we often forget how people, despite sort of coming from different parts of the world, at the end of the day, that matters. That really does matter. They might not have the economic condition, they might not have the sort of infrastructure around them. Someone recognizing that for them and ensuring ways and means to provide them that through, like you said, English and sewing lessons, just a gathering as such. I think you set a very powerful foundation there, and this is where I differentiate what you are doing with Bora Shaba, what you did with Bora Shaba compared to the other organizations. They have a strategic plan, but you had a feeling and it worked for
Yes.
you. So what I also want to understand is, how do you manage to build that trust with people who are really struggling, who lost almost everything? They've lost their home, they've lost their language, they've lost their routine because here they have to come and speak in English, interact with others from different parts of the
Yes.
world. So hope for them is lost. So how did you manage to sort of get them all in the first place? What were those starting steps and the directions which you took?
Yes. As I was saying, our dignity means beyond charity, right? So at Bora Shaba, we don't just provide services, we empower people to lead, volunteer, and contribute. You'll be surprised, somebody doing a research, but because we do bring people together and somebody has that
Hmm.
opportunity to do a research and become a doctor, and
Yeah.
that's a big, big thing that I can mention that we've been doing through Bora Shaba, right? And then
Yeah.
when you see a refugee teaching ESOL to newcomers, you just feel that, this is empowering environment that we are creating. And that, develops, the skills and open
Hmm.
doors to employment. And we are building resilience, and where individuals' contribution is valued and where survival is transformed into collective strength. So when we come together, we are
Hmm.
united and we can make
I
that
can see that
change.
in your vision. And again, I have spoken to some of the people you work with
Yes.
directly, and they really emphasized the importance of how the skills are being, sort of passed on how there's an environment where, you know, as leader of that organization, and I believe your husband is also part of it, who's an active, who plays an active role in the entire
Yeah.
program. I think there's a real environment out there which allows people to exchange ideas. And again, some of the women I've spoken to, they just seem at home. They just seem at home, and they don't describe it as a service. It feels like it's a healing
Yes,
process for them, and they enjoy the company, they enjoy the
yes.
process of what they go around, and every day they feel like coming to that part of the world. So let me just ask you this, Severin. What would a typical journey of an individual, a refugee as we call it, who comes in contact with you and your organization, what would that typically look like? What would you do with them?
As you know, Dr. Tabish, I'm a lived experience. I know the struggle. I know all the barriers that people face. And when somebody comes to me, I have that feeling and I am passionate
Hmm.
of helping. Right. So, in a simple way, what we do provide, bringing people together and not just for work, but a place where, they feel, I do remember, I know you've spoken to some of the people who come here just to, spend the time with other people, share the experience. I was surprised when I met somebody just looking somewhere they can go after leaving
Hmm.
the kid at school. That person didn't have, the opportunity to meet with me when she needed me, and she was kind of like confused, and she didn't really know what to do. That was last week that the person came in, and good, I was in the building, and then she said,
Hmm.
"I'm so happy, Severine, to see you today." Because it's been a year. She used to come to the sewing class, but they've moved from HU5 to HU13. So she struggled,
Hmm.
how to come here. So when she saw me, she was so happy. And I did, just suggest that, the good way of coming when we don't have those like sewing classes or English classes. I think the good way is to join the team and start volunteering. So the person was, who can I see, Severine, so that I can fill the application form? I said, I'm here.
Hmm.
I can help you. Right. The lady was so happy, and the word that came from her did really inspire me, because she said, I'm very happy to meet you, because I know with this you are going to rebuild my life. She said, Severin, you are rebuilding my life, because I have been at home all these years and I never worked in this country. And when before I got married, I was working in the hospital.
Hmm.
And then, came here with no English, and your qualification is not recognized and she can't do anything. So I hope when that person is going to get into volunteering opportunities and I think rebuild her life, I think that's an outcome that myself I feel proud when I hear
Yeah, I
people
think you
saying
should be,
that.
because you enable, individuals in so many different
Yes,
ways. But has there been a moment where you get emotional, Severine? Do you
I
get
do.
emotional? And of course, I know you've been doing this for a very long time.
I do. So emotional, because I've been helping different people with different challenges, right? So there
Hmm.
are those days that you meet somebody who is an asylum seeker, somebody
Hmm.
who hasn't heard about, his case for a year, hasn't heard anything from the home office. And their life, start to, be affected. And they come
Mm-hmm.
in front of you explaining the struggle. Imagine seeing somebody who you can call your father crying in front of
Mm-hmm.
you. I'm telling you, it's so emotional. So there are some days that I just cry with the service users. I just cry with the
Mm-hmm.
service users.
Then
Yeah.
you've got your own family as well, isn't it,
Yes.
Severine? How do you manage that?
And I always say, I don't even know how I manage. I always get that question. How do you manage, Severine, with community, work, and family? I don't even know
Mm-hmm.
how I manage, to be honest with you. But I go through a lot, because every day is not the same. So you found somebody, struggling, with, the work permit, they're struggling with this and that. And then there are some days that you find somebody who is, thankful to what you've done. When they come in, they just, I just came to say thank you to what you've done. And yeah, that's just how I manage. So it is not easy, I'm a mother of
Yes,
five
but that
children.
like what you mentioned, that must be very rewarding. People coming in and talking to you, and of course, you have lived through that. You've gone through, so you step into people's
Yes.
shoes, and you try to help them, which makes it rather easy. I would say easy for for someone who you know who has gone
Yeah.
through that
Yeah.
journey. But for a brief moment, let's look at it from a financial and a practical perspective. So financially, tell me how has it been for Bora Shabaa over the last 10, 15 years? And as things have gotten difficult and
Yeah.
difficult.
It hasn't been easy for Bora Shabaa at all. As you
Hmm.
know, Bora Shabaa was created back in 2007. It became a charity in 2010, and
Hmm.
we were not able to provide, services. And we there was a time that we just went inactive. We couldn't do much
Hmm.
because we didn't
So
have
how
any
long was
funding.
that? When was that?
From 2011 to
Hmm.
2019, we
Okay.
didn't have any funding. So our activities,
Okay.
were just, inactive. And then in 2019, we got the big lottery fund. And
Okay.
unfortunately, in the middle of the project, the pandemic came. Right. And then from there, we had there were a lot of challenges and standards time. And the good thing for me was that I was able to help those who were in need. As you know,
Hmm.
speaking different languages. And the people come here for different reasons, right? There are those who come here for work and maybe coming from a country where they speak English, right? But
Hmm.
for us, we came because we escaped from the war, and
Yeah.
there were people who didn't go to school. There were people who were not working.
Hmm.
There were old people, and so there were lot of things. And those people had the opportunity to come here. Now, during the pandemic, where there wasn't any face to
Hmm.
face with big institutions, and those people, they didn't know, they didn't have any way to go apart from calling us, explaining the situation. There were a moment that I could ask the person to send the application form, just taking pictures and looking at those forms and help filling the forms. There were people that could
Wow.
have, the benefit stopped. because they were claiming uh, uh, I forgot the name of the benefit, income support. I think
Income
income
support,
support,
yes.
right? So those people, they have to witness, they have to prove that they were unable to work, and they have to report about the situation, and all those things were done online. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
help, right? And so there were a lot of things because we could speak same language. We were able to help.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell you that there was a time that I did use my own money to find, they used to call them hero, I think. During the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, uh,
Yeah.
there was an old lady who didn't have electricity and gas in the
Mm-hmm.
house. She didn't have a credit to ring. So she decided to ring somebody who lives in London because they were on Leica mobile, Leica to Leica.
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah.
they called somebody in London. And then that person called one of Bora Shabaa's volunteer and then said, "This lady has called me. She doesn't have electricity or gas in her house. Can you help?" And then the person was like, "Oh, yeah, Severine is here. So I'm going to contact Severine." So the person contacted me. And then I called the lady. She explained the situation. So I had to ring her energy supplier. And at that time, because of the lockdown, they couldn't, they were, so you have to fill the form online. And the poor lady didn't have an email address. So I had to use my email address and then fill the form and then get those people booked. And then they went and they sorted the situation. And then she had to pay £80, 80.
Mm-hmm.
And before they make an appointment, you have to pay. So I had to pay from my own money. Yeah. And yeah, so it was, a challenge time for people, especially for Black minority, for refugees, right? So
Yeah.
went through the support, and then yeah, and we had some funding from two ridings, which was so wonderful, opportunity to get to help the people that needed the support. So we got that funding, and then yeah, so there were more funding after 2021, and then yeah, so we had the opportunity as well to connect with other organizations and say
Mm-hmm.
um uh, working in collaboration with the university. I think that made a big positive impact in our service, and that's when we started the informal ESOL classes, because we know that people were
Mm-hmm.
traumatized and people were scared to even touch or take a pen and write something down.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
created that so that people can feel that, they are valued, they are part of the charity. And that's how we progressed. And then we got few fundings from other organizations. And then until we got the big lottery fund, which is free fund. And
Mm-hmm.
with that, we've been able to employ staff. So we have, we have the project coordinator, the admin doing part time, helping the charity, and with the support of trustees. So yeah, but it's not easy. It's not easy, not just for Bora Shabaa, but
Yeah.
funding is a challenge for most of the organizations. Now imagine an organization that is led by um, a Black leader, and then a female,
Yeah.
if I can say, that back home, we women are left, to just stay at home, a house
Yeah.
there.
I
Yes.
think that's a
Yeah.
beautiful story, Severin. And what I see, I know you spoke about it from your perspective, but what I clearly see here, there are things at human level which you clearly saw at an individual level. So the story you told us about the women, the lady who didn't have the electricity, and the way it all came to
Yes.
you. And then obviously your strategic vision as well in terms of how you built on that you built on that, and obviously as a charity you depend on funding, external funding, which in these days is not at all sort of is not available for a lot of the organization. So clearly you've managed to play that really
Yes.
well, and which is why we are here. I know you have appeared on so many different
Yeah.
platforms speaking about your work, and it shows your resilience. It shows your ability to put 2 plus 2, make things work for people, and move on. So it must hurt you now that when you look at things, because what frustrates many people working in the space, and me included, is how the word refugee it gets turned into a slogan. Basically, one week we are talking about them in terms of the numbers, the other week they become problems. But what people don't talk about for them, like how you have discussed with, you saw them very rarely, others see them as people. But you've always seen them that way, haven't you? You've always looked at the human side, every case, every individual. So when you see how media talks about refugees, and when you see how you work with real people, what goes through your mind, Severin?
When I see or when I hear what is spoken, on the media, and how people are called, refugees and all those things, it makes me feel so sad and
Mhm,
wonder, do people really ask themselves why those refugees are here? And when I know myself, going through all those struggles back home, I was somebody. I was a teacher.
mhm.
And not just me,
Yeah.
others were doctors. People had the work, but they were forced to leave and find themselves in this country where they are not welcomed. I just think, do they really think that refugees is a human being? Do
Yeah.
they really think that a refugee has the right to live? Do they really think that a refugee has, the capacity even of,
Mhm,
helping to the economy of the country? Because I, I just ask myself, is there any way of, you know, telling or teaching than maybe the government,
mhm,
when I know, we can go into politics, but people like myself, I didn't, when the first day that I left my country, which was in 1998, in November, I can't forget. I didn't even think that I would stay out of my house for 2 days because I was going back to my
mhm,
house, which didn't happen, impossible until we are here. And the war still ongoing there. People
mhm,
are not safe. People are not stable. And then you come, to a country where you are not welcomed. But I will tell you that when I arrived here, I felt that I was welcomed. And I always call home my home. because I've lived here. It's going to 20 years now. Right. And yeah, but they just have to consider that refugees are human beings and they have to ask why these people are here. Can they find the reasons why people are here
Mm.
and then sort out where those people are coming from? If there will be a peace, I think people will like to live to
Yeah.
to to
I
to
think that understanding is missing, isn't it? Because again, this is a beautiful country, United Kingdom, and it has people full of empathy. But then you have a certain group, certain section of the media, the politics, or the politicians who are, again, we are talking about racism, we're talking about colonialism. There are so many other
yes,
issues. But I think in your case, Severine, and your work is one of the biggest answer to what you bring and what you
yes,
contribute to the community, how you build the fabric, how you support a group of people. And again, is richer because of you. Hull is richer because of Bora Shabaa. And when I say rich, what I really mean by that is you have built such a fabulous community with women at the center. I'm talking about skill building, I'm talking about safe space, I'm talking about that community circles. And when we look at some of the data as well, refugee women, they are 60% more likely to be employed. Sorry, they are 60% more likely to be unemployed than men. Only 17% of the refugees globally, they access formal education. So what you are doing is so transformative. And when I look at your sewing groups, the language circles, and all those financial literacy sessions which you undertake, they're not small things. They are actually changing
they are.
lives. So yeah.
Yeah, they are changing lives because not only refugees who do benefit from those sessions that we do provide.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does benefit. Local people do benefit from that. Everybody does
Mm-hmm.
benefit. I will tell you we have ladies who come here Tuesdays and Thursdays for the sewing. When they are in the sewing room, you can just hear laugh.
Mm-hmm.
They laugh, they talk, they are happy. And for them, just coming together and share that moment. And with that,
Mm-hmm.
because they've, and then they feel that they belong to this. And then other organizations, other services are benefiting because the people, they're all refugees, traumatized because of the war where
Yeah.
they come from, right? And which has, affected their lives physically, mentally, psychologically, right? But when
Mm-hmm.
they come and they find healings, I think they have been contributing to the NHS as well because they
Yeah.
they they don't often go and have some medication treatment or what, because when somebody is happy, they physical health and mentally is good. So, and that's why I
Yeah.
said we are not just helping refugees, but we are helping the community where
Yeah.
everybody, and then share, some resources, share some learnings, experience. We do have a lot of things. They do focus groups. So there are just a lot of things which, I would say that the community is
Yeah.
benefiting.
And what I also like about what Bora Shaba is doing, I like the fact that you work in small community groups, and the research suggests how working in small community groups allows for better outcomes in terms of the integration, compared to the bigger organizations, who look at numbers basically, people who come through the door. But despite that, funding is very low. They receive less than 5% of the total funding. So I want to sort of look at you or ask you in terms of, putting your business hat on. So how does it work? How do you go about building partnership with other organizations who you think are ideologically similar to what Bora Shabaa is trying to do? How has that experience been for you?
I believe working in collaboration, in partnership, is the
Mhm.
key to get funding and support other people. Because if Bora Shaba will work with other organizations or get some funding, because I know there are some projects that we are working in partnership with other organizations, which is allowing us to help more people. So if we're
Mhm.
going to get funding that we can create jobs to those people who don't have experience, for example, where they can, come and learn and then have the experience and then get into employment. I think we will help more people and yeah, and create
And now,
more jobs.
you know, this again coming back to the whole collaboration part and your partnership with the other organizations. Let's say in Hull, I'm aware there are a few organizations who you work with. How has that experience been in terms of what is your biggest, when we go into a partnership or when you go into collaboration, both the parties bring things on the table. This is my part, this is your part. So, what would you say as Bora Shava? What is your biggest strength when you discuss partnership or when you discuss any sort of collaboration?
The strength of Bora Shaba when it comes to partnership is that each individual has the strength, they have the ability, they have the skills
Mhm.
to deliver something. So each individual playing the part, offering what they can, and for Bora Shaba, delivering what Bora Shaba is capable, what Bora Shaba can do. I think that will, you know, make Bora Shaba more sustainable and the strength of,
So, do
working
you
in
think
partnership.
building on that, do you imagine expanding or going to other cities where you see a similar sort of a situation in the future? Do you have ambition like that?
I always say if I had the opportunity to get funding which can
Mhm.
be distributed into different places, that is my ambition. That's my aim, because I know there are other parts of the country where there are refugees struggling to help others because of the funding. If they do
Mhm.
get the funding needed, I know they will deliver meaningful service that can help the economy of the government where everybody will contribute. So I always think about how, just somebody like, a black lady, you know, being a lead of this organization that is growing, how, if that lady,
Yeah, yeah.
has,
Certainly, you've got plenty given what you've been doing for all
yeah,
this while. Yeah. So, it's very clear, Severine, in terms of what your journey has been. It clearly shows leadership and leadership of a very different kind, something which we are not used to. You are strategic. I'm aware you are strategic in how you go about doing things. But I think you have shown that the empathy side of it as well, which goes hand in hand with leadership, because you care for
yes.
people. So let me ask you one last question before we move into the quick fire round, and that would be again around Bora Shabaa. So, what is the biggest roadblock or the biggest barrier you face as an organization when you're trying to do something so positive for the society?
The barrier, again, I would say is funding. Yeah,
Mhm,
because we have limited services that we can offer just
mhm,
because the funding that we have just employ 3 people, while
mhm,
there are some skills that people as refugees, people have those skills, people have the experience, but there are no funding to
mhm,
support those lived experience, right? So you find somebody like me offering
mhm,
lot of services face to face because people wanting help from me, and
mhm,
I don't have uh, I know we've been relying on volunteers, and again volunteers who have experience, they are also looking for experience in a kind of refugee experience. They are
mhm.
looking for jobs, right? And they can't really give the full time just helping, right? So you find, because I don't have the capacity of paying the staff, so
Mhm,
that's why
mhm.
you just find me doing things. But I wish if I had some funding,
Yeah.
can Bora Shabaa can employ more people to help refugees. Yeah, I
No, I think
think
that's a point well made. I think that's one of the biggest hurdle to what you're trying to do and what you have been doing all this while. So clearly there are case studies, there are examples, there are successful cases where you have managed to turn people's life around. So certainly an organization like yours deserves and requires that funding to turn it around for a lot of people. And you've got that vision and experience as well. And thank you so much for sharing that. So now I want to go into the quick fire, Severine. So these
okay.
are sort of short answers to my questions. I'll be asking three of them. It's totally up to you where you want to take us, what you want to share with us. So my first question to you would be, do you want to share any memory from your journey to where you are right now, which you're very proud of?
Yes, they are. Okay, just one memory. One. Okay. Uh, One memory that I am proud, which I can share with you, is when I completed the New to Leadership program, right? When I
Mm-hmm.
completed that with leaders who have experience, and I mean English, because there were 12 of us, and I was the only Black person, and whose
Okay.
English is not, my first language, right? So when we had the conference and what we did deliver, I was so proud, and I always remember that because the first person that I met, Harriet Johnson, the first
Mm-hmm.
day I met, so we met at the Dancing God down Beverly Road. And she was
Mm-hmm.
telling me, Severin, I know you've been doing a lot of things. You've been helping and you are leading this Bora Shabaa. I want you to lead outside. outside of your organization, because I know you have, the strength, your community, so
Mm-hmm.
everybody is, there looking, waiting for your support. I know you do this, but if you can do that externally, and that's where I started, this journey as, as a leader. Yeah, I do say, this is a big moment,
No,
for me.
I can totally understand and imagine what the feeling must be for you when you completed that, when you're part of that,
Yeah.
coming into this. Yeah.
I always look at the pictures.
Keep hold of that. Keep hold of that picture. My next question to you, I know you mentioned a person here. My next question was that, in fact, one person in Hull who made you feel at home, safe, and supported you. Do you want to name anyone or any organization?
My husband, is
Mm-hmm.
somebody who has, if I can say that, if I'm here, is my husband who did push me, right? Because when I came, I joined a work program where I was offered a cleaning job. After
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks, I was asked to go with a lady, an ESOL tutor, and then where so I think I did like a free sessions with the tutor, just observing the way she was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then no, yeah, she's an English speaker and she's a tutor, but the way she was teaching was this is why we
Mm-hmm.
don't learn the language so easily and fast. So I just had the courage to ask the tutor to sit down and said, "Can I help?" And at that time I didn't have any, so
Mm-hmm.
I just had I think my level 2 English at Hall College.
Mm-hmm.
So I did ask the teacher to sit down, and then I stood and then I taught, and all the ladies were, wow, she is a teacher. She is a teacher. And then the tutor was also, surprised and amazed, hearing the feedback from the student. So went back to the office. She reported that Severine is a good teacher. And then from there,
Mm-hmm.
I was sent to Hall College to do teaching trainings. So
Wow.
I did the level 3 in preparing to teach in the lifelong learning sector. And that was because I was a teacher back home. So yeah, so I took into, and the person who did help me was an advisor. So helped me
Mm-hmm.
to build my CV. Then yeah, so I started, attending those sessions, and then while I was working there, I did customer service. I did NVQ level 3, assessor training. So what those qualifications, and then the teaching certificate was also the most important thing, because from there I started teaching people from different countries. So I taught lot of people from different countries. And then when I stopped, went on maternity, so I had my two babies here. And
Mm-hmm.
then after 6 months, I said I wanted to look for jobs. And then my husband said, "How you want to look for jobs? Yes, you want to
Mm-hmm.
go and work with another, employer or charity or what? But Severine, you have the skills. See the people that you've helped. You've helped lot of people. Why can't you just apply for some funding and then start teaching English at Bora Shabaa? So the charity is here, and yeah." you are not, you are not teaching. So why not do this? So we got somebody who did help us. We got the funding, and then yeah, slowly, there we are offering ESOL classes. So my husband did really, push me, and he's somebody who, he is really ambitious. So of war he does and war he sees into somebody.
Mhm.
He always tell me that I know you
That's
better than
actually a
yourself.
beautiful story of how you turned yourself into helping others through
Yes, through
teaching,
teaching.
and you seize the opportunity, and in a very nice way, in a classroom. And some people who would dare not say a word, in a classroom as formal as
Yes.
that, and you had the
I had
courage
the
to talk.
courage, to ask the teacher to sit down so I can teach. I don't even know that.
Wow.
that was
Well
that
done
was
on that one.
crazy.
No, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with us. And my last question to you is,
Yes.
what makes you happy, Severine, when you look at what you do? And, of course, every day brings a new challenge, but what will give you that utmost happiness in the space you're working?
What makes me happy? Yeah. First of all, I like what I do. Yeah. I like what I do. I have the passion of helping. And when I help, I just feel happy. I do feel happy when I help. When I see somebody, in and saying thank you so much for what you have done. Thank you, because of you, because of Bora Shabaa, I have been able to do this. Have been able to accomplish what I wanted in my life. So yeah, I think it's just a passion, to be honest with you. Yeah, helping and then seeing the people that I help, happy, and also of giving back to the community, giving back to the community
Yeah.
because yeah, I know but yeah, there are a lot of things going on, but I know Hall is a welcoming city.
Yeah.
Is a city of sanctuary.
Yeah. Of course. It's a city of sanctuary. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And
it is, and I can't. I always, if I had, the power to change things, if I had that ability to just, help, financially when somebody, is seeking like for, a house and stuff, if, I had that
yeah.
opportunity, I think helping people is, something that really makes
That
me
shows what
feel
a
happy.
human you are, Severin. We have so much to learn from you, and the work you have been doing, it is absolutely brilliant. I think Hull as a city has, like I said earlier, has benefited a huge deal from what you and your husband does through Bora Shaba. So thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. Clearly, you have told us so many different things,
Yeah,
in terms of how the community work which you talk about. It's not about charity, which a lot of people think it's about charity, but it's about that desire and courage which you have. Again, Bora Shaba, it shows us something very, very important, that you as individuals and your husband and all the volunteers who work with you, they look at people, they look at their feelings, they look at their emotions, and they work with them, which is what makes them, which is what makes your organization very, very successful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And to everyone listening, if this conversation moved you at all, please make sure you share it. Share it amongst your people, amongst your network. Support your local organizations, where often the systems and the government and the councils, they fall short. Yeah. Thank you. And up until next time, keep listening, keep questioning, and keep building here in the Broken Bazaar.